So we'll go ahead and get started here. Hello, everyone. My name is Khalisa Bolling, and I'm a Senior Regional Planner here at SANDAG. And I'd like to thank you for joining us today. I hope you find today's presentation informative. Just a few housekeeping notes as we get started. So you will see a box on the right-hand side of your screen for questions. Please feel free to type in your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll save time at the end to address them. We'll also be recording this webinar, and you'll receive a copy of this recording from GoToWebinar tomorrow in case you'd like to watch it again, because there will be a lot of information shared. And you can also share it with your colleagues, friends, or family. So here's a quick overview of our agenda this morning. Natalie Cortes is going to join us to provide an overview of this year's Bike Anywhere Day event on May 18th. Then we'll hand it over to my colleague, Josh Clark, who will provide us with some bike project updates. Next, Kevin Baross from the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition will share some important bike safety information. And lastly, I will share some information on SANDAG Sustainable Transportation Services. And then we'll be sure to leave time at the end for questions. Okay, so let's get started. I'd like to welcome Natalie Cortes, the Senior Public Outreach Officer at SANDAG. Good morning, Natalie.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So, as you all may have noticed, there are a few changes for this year's Bike Month event. We are excited to host the reinvented Bike Anywhere Day, formerly known as Bike to Work Day. So instead of only encouraging commuters to bike to work, this year we're asking all of our San Diego residents, whether they are students, families, commuters, or bike enthusiasts, to take the free pledge and go by bike on Thursday, May 18th, 2023. We encourage everyone to spread the word with your colleagues and friends to take the free pledge, and you may do so at sandag.org/bike-month. You'll also see that link fall in the chat in a few minutes. It's important for everyone to take the free pledge and visit our website so they receive up-to-date information leading up to May 18th. The great news is our pledge window will remain open through the day of the event date itself. Yes, that means last-minute pledge submissions will be accepted on Bike Anywhere Day, May 18th. Also new this year is our social media sweepstakes. Participants who have taken the pledge are encouraged to share the pinned Instagram post on SANDAG Region to enter for a chance to win one of four $250 gift cards from Moment Bicycles. This is a great prize, so please make sure to take advantage. You can visit our Instagram page or sandag.org/bike-month to follow the terms and conditions. Up next is the winning t-shirt color and design that you all voted for earlier this year. Thank you for everyone who voted. You'll see the winning color choice was blue. This t-shirt design will be available for pickup at any of the 100+ pit stops on the morning of May 18th. T-shirt sizes are first come, first serve, so please know we may not be able to accommodate everyone's preferred sizes. In the case you aren't able to get the size you want, we recommend that you visit another pit stop along your route. And we're also happy to announce this year we are offering limited amounts of kid t-shirt sizes. So that's a really great offering that we have this year. And moving along, I'd like to take a moment to show our appreciation to this year's Bike Anywhere Day partners. Their support of Bike Anywhere Day allows us to host this event year after year for the last 30 years. So thank you to all of those partners that you see on the screen. And speaking of partners, this year we are partnering with B-Cycle in Sanitas. They have their bike share, which we will be giving out 124 one-month unlimited passes. So for all of you North County bike riders, please be on the lookout for more details on this B-Cycle Encinitas giveaway. And lastly, we encourage all of you to help us spread the word for Bike Anywhere Day using our promotional toolkit, which contains flyers, posters, social media, newsletter content, digital ads, and more. So please feel free to use these materials and encourage your friends and family to take the free pledge. You'll see the toolkit is linked at the bottom of our Bike Month page, and it's circled below. And just for some examples, you'll see examples of the poster and half-page flyers that are both available in English and Spanish. We also have our banner ads and social media graphics that are included in the toolkit. And as I mentioned, the toolkit can be downloaded at any time on the Bike Month page at sandag.org/Bike Month, right at the bottom. And now I will kick it off back to Khalisa for another poll.
All right, thank you, Natalie. I'm really looking forward to this newly reimagined event. And as Natalie said, we're going to do another poll to find out where you're planning to bike on Bike Anywhere Day. All right, so looks like majority are still trips to work, but we do have a variety of other destinations, which is great to see. Like Natalie said, we're trying to expand this to more than just work trips, so great to see some other destinations as well. So now I'd like to welcome Josh Clark, Active Transportation Planner for SANDAG's Engineering and Construction Division, and he's here to provide you with updates on the latest bike projects.
Hey, thanks, Khalisa. Oh, I'm so excited. My favorite topic and favorite day of the year to talk about. So thanks all. And I'd like to just give you a brief overview of what I want to discuss today. We're going to talk about some recently completed bikeway projects, ways to incorporate experiencing those bikeway projects on Bike Anywhere Day and visiting as many pit stops as you can, and then a couple of segments to avoid this year. All right, so here is one of the most recently completed high priority urban bikeway projects that SANDAG finished about 18 months ago. It's been getting a lot of really great use, and this connects the communities of downtown and uptown. So if you find yourself anywhere in this section, please make your way over to the 4th Avenue or 5th Avenue bikeways. 5th Avenue heads northbound from downtown to uptown, and then 4th Avenue does the opposite, heading one way from uptown into downtown through Bankers Hill. And these are both cycle track projects. And you can see that there is a separated bikeway. These are images of 5th Avenue, again, which is northbound, and a very comfortable all ages and abilities bikeway facility, about 4.5 miles in total. And the next bikeway project I'd like to highlight is the Georgia Meade Bikeway. This is in the North Park Mid-City suite of bikeway projects. So Meade Avenue heads east-west. You can see it's the light blue line here on the map. And then Georgia Street heads north-south and makes a nice connection to the recently upgraded Park Boulevard bikeways. So the Georgia Meade Bikeway, we have a couple photos here. It's sort of what we call a bike boulevard, which is a low-stress, low-volume bikeway, typically coursing through like a residential neighborhood with innovative bikeway treatments to improve crossings of major and minor streets along the bikeways. So here are a couple of those intersection improvements. Top left is a raised crosswalk. Bottom left is a bend out. And then here's a plan view of the intersection of Meade and Texas Street. So Meade has the bikeway here that has the bike walk crossings across Texas Street. And this is an example of the bend outs in both directions. So at Meade, a cyclist can get up onto the sidewalk into the textured sort of bikeway area here and use the push button to activate the signal for the crossing. if it's red, for example, and then you can cross through the bike walk here, which is the lime green skip conflict striping. And to do a 2-stage turn, for example, you could stop there in the bike box and wait for the green light heading onto Texas Street to make the left turn. So yeah, some really cool new bikeway treatments out that you'll get to experience this year, ideally. The other bike boulevard project that I want to highlight is the Landis Bikeway. This is parallel to the Mead Bikeway, but further south, connecting City Heights and North Park. And you can see that Landis is a little bit more turns, not the straight line that the Mead Avenue portion of the Mead and Georgia Bikeway alignment has. So I'll show you how to navigate Landis very comfortably when you're riding it. There's some images here of the Landis Bikeway. It has a lot of wayfinding signage, which you can see here, top right has the green Go by Bike logo and the purple bikeway signage. Obviously, Landis has a lot of those innovative intersection control treatments too. And in the bottom right, for example, here's another one of those bend outs where bikes can continue contraflow. And then you can see in the background there is a decision point with wayfinding signage that says stay right to stay on the Landis Bikeway, which makes it very easy and comfortable to navigate. Excellent. All right, so heading over to the coast, here's a north-south alignment, the recently completed Rose Creek Bikeway, which connects two really important segments of the regional bike network. To the north, the Rose Canyon Bikeway continues all the way up to Gilman and La Jolla Colony Drive. And then to the south, the Rose Creek Bikeway continues down to Mission Bay. So the Rose Creek Bikeway is this gap closure here. And we've got some images of the ribbon cutting on the next slide. Cool. So you can see here, this is a nice Class 1 bikeway that parallels Santa Fe Street and also is running parallel to the Midcoast. You can see the Midcoast trolley extension there. The blue line is also in the image. So this is an example of a Rails to Trails project. And we have a couple of these throughout the presentation where it's running parallel to and adjacent to lots of high frequency transit stops. So if you find yourself wanting to take a little break and having integrating transit in your bike anywhere day or any bikeway trip planning that you do, you'll find that it's quite comfortable to use some of these projects and easily take your bike onto and off of transit and to extend your trip. So here we go up to North County, and this is the Inland Rail Trail. This is about so based on this map here, about half of this project has been complete. And this is the eastern segments have been completed. So if we started in Escondido and head west, all of this is complete there to North Pacific Street, which is about Palomar College. That next segment was completed a few years ago. So you continue on through the county and then to the city of Vista. But once you get to the orange alignment and the blue features here, those are phases 3 and phases 4. They have not been completed yet. So as you would head further west, for example, you would be on local streets. But again, this is a good Rails with Trails project. So it's easy to get on to at any of the sprinter locations and to close some of these gaps if you didn't feel comfortable riding. So here's a couple of images. You can see here the bridge over the Buena Creek. And the next image shows the sprinter itself. See how close you are. It's very easy, again, to integrate transit into your trips. And the last image is the westernmost segment. This is right here right at the city of Oceanside, city limits. Other recently completed projects, folks have been very busy. Agencies throughout the region upgrading and implementing new bikeway projects. Here are 2 examples. This is 47th Street to the left outside of Gompers Prep in Encanto. And then you can see here the Midcoast Viaduct here. This is the end of the Midcoast line, and Genesee Avenue recently upgraded too with a separated bikeway, both in the city of San Diego. All right, so this part is kind of going to be interactive, and I encourage you all to follow along with your phones for the first segment here, or desktop with some links that we're going to provide. So be ready for this. Here is route planning with the pit stops. So for Bike Anywhere Day, obviously you're going to want to maximize the number of pit stops that you can visit, while also using some of these recently highlighted bikeways that you feel most comfortable riding to and in. So this is the My Maps pit stop map. Google My Maps is very helpful for for creating your own maps, but maybe less helpful for following the steps of actually navigating and doing route selection for day of. So for that, I recommend you bring those pit stops into the Google Maps app. And I'm going to take you step by step here, left to right, and show you how that happens. So on an iPhone, these are all screenshots from my phone, an iPhone that has the Google Maps app installed. The first thing to do is to open that Google My Maps link to the pit stops in Safari, for example. So that's the first image here. And opening it in Safari, you see at the top that you get the option to, because the Google Maps app is installed on my phone, to open those pit stops in the Google Maps app. And that is the second image. So you see the pit stops are now populated in the Google Maps app. I have the aerial base map turned on, but we'll talk about changing the base maps and turning on other layers too. So it's very tempting when you get to that screen to click the view map legend. But and if you do so, you get the next pop-up, which shows the pit stops. And there, I want to encourage everyone, when you get to that screen, don't click close, because you will lose all of the pit stop locations. You won't lose them forever. I'll show you how to recover them very quickly in the Google Maps app, but instead click the back button, and you can see that the map legend bar is hidden at this point, and you got all the pit stops there with all the functionality of the Google Maps app. So this will be nice for day of to have in your pocket all the pit stop locations in your, for me, very comfortable to use Google Maps app. All right, on the next screen, let's take a look at how you can, as I mentioned, change the base map. So we'll turn from satellite onto the default gray base map, and then you can turn on the biking layer, which is great to have too. Uh-oh, we lost the pit stops. Okay, how do we recover them? You see at the bottom of the Google Maps app, there is a saved button in the middle. So if you click the saved button, you get that next screen, which says saved at the top. In the bottom right of that screen, there is a maps button. If you click that maps button, you will get the pit stops layer selectable again, and you can re-add the pit stops layer to the Google Maps app. The final screenshot here in dark mode is from an Android. This is going to operate just the same way in Android or iPhone's Google Maps app. The only difference is that in the Legends window at the Explore section through there, Explore at the bottom, that's where you can click the Bike Anywhere pit stops and add those to your map again. Cool. Okay, I hope that's helpful. And I want to show you how to do route planning with the SANDAG iBike map. So the first link at the top here takes you to the iCommute landing page, and that's the smaller image here. I think it's a good place to start. It's got the map legend and also some helpful text about other functions within this web map, the iBike map. So that's typically where I like to point people to for the first time to learn a bit more about the functionality of the iBike map. And then below that is the View Larger Map link, which takes you to the web map itself. So here, the larger image is the iBike map with all of the existing bikeways turned on and the pit stops this year for the first time for Bike Anywhere Day. Cool. So I'll show you how I like to set up the iBike map to do route planning and trip planning. When you open this the iBike map, the bikeways coming soon automatically turn on. It's very cool to see all of the exciting bikeways that are going to be implemented soon, but they're not going to be implemented in the next 2 weeks. So I will turn the bikeways coming soon layer off. You can do that here with the layers list, which is the top left icon on the iBike map. And so now we just see all the existing bikeways by bikeway facility type and the pit stops themselves. All right, on the next screen, I'm going to point out the routing directions widget. So here we have biking directions. You see the bottom icon in the top left, the A to B icon. These are the biking directions. And so when you click it, you get this input screen. And I've turned off the bikeways just to make this a little bit easier to see. And so underneath stops, there is the point symbol, and you can click on the point symbol and you can add as many points as you'd like to the map itself. So in this example, you can see that I've added 5 points starting in Kensington, hitting 4 different pit stops, and ending in downtown. So I added those 5 points, and then I click run on this input screen. And that takes us to the output screen, which is the next image. Excellent. you can see on the output that we have 3 different route types: most separated, mixed, or most direct. So for example, the most direct route takes you on Adams Avenue, but the most separated route takes you on the previously mentioned Meade Avenue's bikeway. Personally, you've got some options here. I ride with a 4-year-old on my bike, so I like to do sort of a combination and certainly ride the bikeways that I know already and am comfortable with. So I would do sort of a hybrid here. I'd go on Meade, and then I'd go on the recently upgraded Park Boulevard and hit up that pit stop outside of Centro Cultural de la Raza and go back up through the park to 4th Avenue bikeway. So I hope that you find this is helpful to look at some options for route planning for Bike Anywhere Day. All right, so in addition to route planning, here's an app I'd like to talk about for trip tracking. Running in the background, the Strava app is, I think, very easy to use and very helpful to kind of keep a catalog of the places that I've ridden, how quickly I rode, and for how far. And one big advantage to this trip tracking app in particular, obviously there are a few. Map My Route is another good one, but one advantage to Strava is that they publish the Strava Metro data set, and with a partnership with public agencies like SANDAG, we have access to the Strava Metro data set, which is all of the trips taken in the region anonymized, and we use it for bikeways monitoring and evaluation, and also for future bikeway project planning. So just wanted to highlight that here. A nice way to kind of passively record and share your data, share your trips. So the routes to avoid this year, we'll talk about 3. First is the Pershing Bikeway. The Pershing Bikeway is going to be a route that we will brag about next year, but is just not open yet. There is a temporary bikeway on Pershing between Yupa Street and Florida Drive, but if you've never ridden Pershing before, I don't recommend it this year for the first time. Instead, I recommend going over and, as mentioned, getting onto Park Boulevard to use as an alternate route, and then going through Balboa Park and over to 4th and 5th Avenue bikeways instead. As mentioned, yeah, between Yupa Street and Florida Drive, it looks a lot like this. Very tempting, but this is the active construction site, the future Pershing Bikeway. In the background, you can see that there is a barrier there. Behind that barrier is the Class 1 facility between Yupas and Florida, but it doesn't extend all the way into downtown. So that's one route to avoid. The next is the active construction site, the Bayshore Bikeway Barrio Logan segment. So here's an image of what Harbor Drive will look like in the future when the project is complete, but it doesn't look like that right now. Right now it is again actively being implemented. So there is a detour set up in place here at 28th Street. So if, for example, heading northbound, once you get to 28th Street, I recommend going over to Main Street, and then you can get back onto Harbor Drive at Cesar Chavez Parkway. But please know that going north from Cesar Chavez into downtown on Harbor Drive, this is again, like the temporary traffic control is in place, and it's very much a constrained right of way with a lot of active construction going on. So this is something that I want to point out if that's on your Bike Anywhere Day route. And then here, the most recent project that we've broke ground on last week, the Border to Bayshore Bikeway. This is not quite as intense an active construction site. This route alignment would still serve you well on Bike Anywhere Day, but in coming months, it certainly will be more impacted by the active construction work of building this new bikeway. All right, and we've got lots more projects that we're going to be able to highlight soon that are going into construction. So here's just a few of them that we're excited about breaking ground on soon. And then further down the queue, but imminent as well, are these other additional bikeways that we'll be really excited to make critical bike connections on the regional bike network. Additionally, we're working on the regional bike plan update. So that Strava Metro data set and your feedback is all really welcome for that as we determine what projects we want to build, where and when with that regional bike plan update. So that's it for me, and I'm really excited for everyone to participate in Bike Anywhere Day. I'll be at the pit stop on Broadway Pier, so come say hello and tell me how your ride was. And yeah, I'm really excited. So thanks for having me, everyone.
All right, thank you so much, Josh, for all that great information. Now I'll turn it over to Kevin Baross from the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition to provide you with some information about bike safety and to help everyone prepare for to ride safely on Bike Anywhere Day. So thank you for joining us, Kevin.
Thank you for having me, Khalisa. I'm excited to be here. This is an excellent service that we're providing. Bike Anywhere Day is a day that we at the Bike Coalition look forward to all year long. And so we're definitely looking forward to this year. Josh did a great job of talking about some specifics, and I'd actually like to zoom back a little and make it a little bit more broad. So the topic of today's, my section of this panel is e-bike commuting 101. It's really just the basics. And I will preface all this by saying, if you'd like more information, I assume you all do, you want to be experts about this stuff, please continue to check out all the education classes that the Bike Coalition teaches. There's some that are shorter, some that are longer, and there's a lot of information to be found out there and a lot of information I'd love to share. So come find us. Let's start with the specific rules of the road. Here's the secret. They're all the same as they are for driving a car. If you know how to drive a car and you are aware of what the rules are for that, then you're pretty much aware of what the rules are for driving a bicycle as well. So concepts like first come, first serve, concepts like slower traffic on the right, passing on the left, these roads are designed to move human beings through space. And I mean that, and I'll say it again, roads are for moving people, not just cars. Sometimes those people move in cars, sometimes they move in buses and trucks and vans and, bikes, e-bikes, scooters, skateboards, rollerblades, roller skates, Lyft, Uber, taxi, all kinds of stuff. So if we're all using the road, we're using it as drivers. And if we're using it as drivers, then these infrastructure signs apply to us. Things like stop signs, things like stoplights, right turn lanes, left turn lanes. You're always going to be best off. I assume you're all taking notes. Here's the part to highlight. You're always going to be best off when you're most predictable. That's part of the reason we have rules of the road. Part of the reason we have laws is because it makes it easier for me to anticipate what's going to happen next, and it makes it easier for you to anticipate what I'm going to do next. So I can reasonably assume if someone's in the right turn lane and the light is red, then I can assume they're going to stop, and after the light changes, they're going to turn. Although I guess that depends on whether there's a legal right on red, but that's a topic for another day. We've also got all these different types of bike infrastructure that exist. There's 4 main types. I wanted to go over the specifics of what each of those were. So again, Josh talked about a couple of these in specifics. More broadly, there are 4 types. This is specifically the San Diego River Trail. At the very end of the horizon line there, you've got Dog Beach and Ocean Beach. And if you turn this camera around and face the other direction, then you'd be able to ride this all the way to SDSU with very few, if any, bike versus car points of interaction. The defining characteristic of the bike path is that there's almost no car traffic at all. In exchange, we've got people walking dogs with really long dog leashes. Because this is a bike-specific area, Class 3 e-bikes that have a top speed of 28 miles per hour rather than 20 are not recommended or allowed on this specific type of bike infrastructure. You're moving at the same speed of cars, you should probably be driving closer to where the cars are, driving that bicycle closer to where the cars are. So bike paths are great. If you live at one end and work at the other end, then use the whole thing. If you have to add on a half mile in order to get to the bike path that still gets you closer to where you want to go, it might be worth it. You're less sweaty when you get to work. You can take your time. It's a little more casual. So keep an eye out for those on that SANDAG bike map. Class 2 is a bike lane. Bike lanes are defined essentially just by the paint on the road. Sometimes you'll see a buffer, and that buffer doesn't have a physical barrier. It's a painted buffer. And sometimes that buffer is in between where the cars drive and where the bikes drive. Sometimes that buffer is in between where the cars park and where the bikes drive. Sometimes there's a buffer on both sides. That's my favorite. But regardless, a bike lane is an indicator of where you probably should be when driving a bicycle. There are, however, reasons why you would need to leave a bike lane. Bike lanes become dashed before intersections. And as we all know as car drivers, obviously, you cannot cross a solid line ever when driving a car or driving a bike, but you can cross a dashed line when driving a car or driving a bike. Bike lanes become dashed before intersections because cars that need to turn right need to do so from as far right as practicable before they turn right, so they're not turning right from the middle of the road. And bike drivers that want to continue going straight aren't doing it from the very far right edge of the road. So bike lanes become dashed for those reasons. It's a good place to be. It's probably where you should be. If the bike lane's too close to where parked cars are parked and the door is going to open into the way, that's the reason you might see people leave the bike lane. Debris, glass, bushes overgrown, any number of things. I'll say it again, it's where you're probably supposed to be. It's where you should be, but there's any number of reasons why you would see people leaving the bike lane. Class 3 is a bike route. A bike route is defined essentially just by the signs. There's no physical infrastructure on the ground that makes it different than any other street around it. So what is it that makes it different? Well, it could be any number of things. The road could be wider, the route could be more direct. The idea is the more people that ride bikes there, the more likely people are to see people riding bikes there. They interact with them better. It becomes better known as a bike area. And so in order to encourage that, they put up the sign that says bike route, more people ride their bikes, and you get the sort of circular logic of it all. Oftentimes it will have directional arrows, Balboa Park 2 miles this way, SDSU 1 mile that way. It's a good reminder that you're probably where you're supposed to be when you're using a bicycle. Not that there's anywhere you're not supposed to be necessarily, but the idea is it reinforces the idea of this is an area where you're likely to see bicycles as a car driver, and as a bike driver, you're likely to see other bicyclists there, which can make you feel a little bit more confident, I think is a good word. Finally, class 4 is a cycle track. These two pictures were taken specifically on J Street in downtown San Diego. Within downtown, there's a whole network of these that are going in. So we've got them on 4th, 5th, 6th, Beach, J, all over the place. And now leaving downtown into Balboa Park, you've also seen them in North County and Encinitas. You've seen them in a whole bunch of different places. The simplest way to explain it is oftentimes what they've done is simply shifted, swapped where the cars park and where the bikes drive. And so instead of cars parking next to the curb and then having space for bikes and then having space for cars, we've swapped it. So now cars are parked closer to where the main travel lane is. And then in between the sidewalk and the parking area is a cycle track. This example here is two-way on one side of the street, and it's got a physical barrier in between where the cars drive and where the bikes drive. Technically, bikes are still allowed to use the full lane if they choose. I will say these barriers are a good reminder that you probably shouldn't be crossing over this area. They're not a complete physical barrier. It's still possible for accidents and crashes to occur. These are good for in between intersections. You're definitely a lot less stressed. There's a little bit less to worry about. At intersections, you're still looking out for things, and at specific intersections, you may even see a special kind of light, which I will cover in 2 slides. But in the meantime, let's move on to neighborhood streets. This isn't a specific type of infrastructure that you will see on that bike map. That iCommute bike map is great. Apple Maps is getting better at showing directions. Google Maps is getting better at showing directions. And again, the iCommute bike map is superb and essentially second to none when it comes to bike directions across the country, really. One thing it's not going to show is just the differentiation between a very busy street and a not so busy street. And so for me, if I'm planning my route ahead of time, if I'm thinking about driving a car, I'm thinking about freeways. And if I'm thinking about driving a bicycle, then I have all these other options. There's class 1, 2, 3, 4 bike facilities, but then just simply put, if I'd rather not take Mira Mesa Boulevard, I can just go 1 or 2 blocks over and now I'm in a neighborhood. There is no double yellow line. The streets are wider. There's not as many traffic lights, if any. The volume of traffic is slower. And I was asked on the news, by a newscaster, I was talking about biking to work, and they said, well, don't you get sweaty when you get to work? And I said, well, I get sweaty if I push myself. I get sweaty if I work really hard. I get sweaty if I bike like I'm working out. But if I bike like I'm just taking my time and I put myself in a position where I don't have to worry about the speed and volume of traffic around me, if I take a route that allows me be a little bit more casual, then I'm not sweaty when I get to work. I'm taking my time. So this you can use a bike for exercise, and that is a sort of unintended benefit of using the bicycle. But for me, my main focus, the reason I use it to get around is because it's the option that's the most convenient for me. Oftentimes it's faster than driving a car, especially when looking for parking. And so using these neighborhood streets and just being aware of that as an option is something that can help you with route planning. So I've got a couple different things. First, let's start with this specific sign of the specific bike signal. You can see it off to the side of the street there underneath the Laurel Street sign. It's kind of cool. It's a light that's specifically for bicycles. Oftentimes this is paired with a no right on red sign. The idea being everyone's arriving at the intersection, the light is red, everyone is stopped, there is no right on red. The first thing that happens is the light goes green for bicycles. So all the bicycles who are on that cycle track on the edge of the road are able to flow through the intersection. After they've flowed through, the light turns red for bicycles and then is green for cars. Then if a car wants to turn green across the cycle track, there's no worry of conflict because the bikes are stopped. We've separated the movements. Now these don't exist at every single intersection where there is a cycle track. Single signal, that's a fun tongue twister. But the ones that they do exist at there's a good amount of them, and they're definitely at the ones that are busier. So keep an eye out for these. It can be somewhat confusing the first couple times you see them. I had someone say to me they as a car driver, they found cycle tracks confusing. They said, I don't really know when I'm driving, it makes it so I have to really focus and pay attention when I'm driving. And I said, yeah, that's kind of the point. Speaking of which, we've also got this Shero symbol. If we were all in a room together, I'd ask you and you'd raise your hands and answer, what does this Shero symbol mean? I think it looks like a speed boost, like in Mario Kart, like if you drove over it, you'd go twice as fast. We don't have that technology yet, but write your elected officials. Maybe we can get there one day. In the meantime, we've got this Shero symbol, and it looks like a bicycle with two chevrons on top. That's different than the symbol for a bike lane. Bike lane's more of a traditional arrow, but this is just the chevrons. These are only painted on certain lanes and not other lanes. It doesn't mean share the road. It doesn't mean look out for bikes. It doesn't mean bikes are allowed to use this road, because all three of those things are true, even if that symbol isn't painted in the lane. The only thing this symbol is meant to communicate is, specifically, the lane in which it's painted is too narrow to share side by side with a car. Because it's too narrow to share side by side with a car, there's a couple different things that need to happen. One, as a bicyclist, I can communicate to car drivers that there isn't enough room to safely pass when passing a bicyclist. And as such, if I put myself further towards the center of the lane, it encourages safe lane passing, as in fully changing lanes in order to pass. As a car driver, if I'm traveling in a lane that I see this symbol painted, and there's a bicyclist somewhere in the street in front of me, be they right, left, or center of that lane, regardless, this symbol has already let me know there isn't enough room to safely pass that bicyclist without changing lanes. It's illegal to cross a double yellow line in order to pass a slower moving vehicle, so there are situations in which it's a single lane in each direction, and there's someone who's slow going in front of you. And am I telling you that you just have to wait for someone who's going slow and you have to slow down and be courteous and polite and patient? Yes. When it's safe, oftentimes the slower moving vehicle will move off to the side and allow for space to pass when it's safe. But without safe passing distance, oftentimes the cyclist will communicate that information by putting themselves closer to the center of the lane. California Vehicle Code 21202 states that cyclists need to ride as far right as practicable. And sometimes that can mean essentially in the middle of the lane. So that's something to look out for and be aware of. Roads are for people, not just people in cars. So when I do these presentations, I've gone all over the county, San Ysidro to Oceanside, kindergarten through high school, workplaces, tech, pharmaceutical companies, all kinds of different places. The thing that I've found helpful, especially when talking about e-bikes, is this idea of, do you want to use this device as a toy or do you want to use this device as a vehicle? You're welcome to do either. If you'd like to buy a toy that goes fast and you can sit on it and, you know, it'll take you around and you can spin around and whatever you want, that's a toy. That's something you would take into a private land. That's something you would play with in your backyard. If there's a specific outdoor park that allowed for those devices to be used, you're using that device like a toy. If you'd like to use a device like a vehicle, I mean, there are people that use cars as toys. Oftentimes those are people that are on racetracks, those are people that are professionals. And if you want to use a car like a toy, there's a place to do that, and it's not on public roads. The same concept applies to bicycles. So if you want to use an e-bike like a vehicle, then that's something you are doing on public roads. And because you're on those roads, those rules of the road apply to you. Those rules of the road apply to users of the road. Stop signs, stoplights, slower traffic on the right, all the things we've already discussed. Acting in a way that makes it clear that you're supposed to be there, acting in a way that makes you look confident will make it more likely that people treat you like you're confident and make you treat you like you're supposed to be there. I used to hear this phrase of you should assume that no one can ever see you. Assume that people are looking right through you and they never ever see you. The issue with that is the more you act like you're invisible, the more likely you are to be treated like you're invisible. And the more you act like you're supposed to be there, the more likely you are to be treated like you're supposed to be there. So when there is that separated facility, when there is that bike lane, those are absolutely good places to be. In situations where they don't exist, in situations where the lane is too narrow to share, sometimes you'll see cyclists closer to the center of the lane. That comes with confidence, and I'm fully aware of that. But again, and I've said this 3 times, so again, it's something to highlight. Roads are for people, not just people in cars. I definitely wanted to include this image of a roundabout because there are more and more of them going in all over the place. This photo is specifically from the Mead Landis Bikeway. There's a couple things to notice about this photo. I see bike lanes in this photo. I see them on the right side of the screen. I see them on the left side of the screen. I don't see any bike lanes in the roundabout. What I do see in the roundabout are sharrows, which let me know that this lane is too narrow to share side by side with the car. So what do? These bike lanes, as they approach the roundabout, you're only seeing them as they leave the roundabout, but as these bike lanes approach the roundabout, they will become dashed and go away, essentially. And that's a good indicator that you need to treat this as a single lane which is too narrow to share. As a car driver, I then anticipate bike drivers moving closer to the center of the lane and entering that roundabout single file. There isn't enough room. There's not a bike lane on a roundabout. It's a single file lane that's narrow, and as such, bikes and cars are single file when they move through it. There are slight differentiations when it comes to roundabouts, and I've seen some that have specific areas that work slightly different than others. As a general rule, though, a couple of things are always going to be the same regardless of the roundabout style. One is traffic in the roundabout never stops. Once you're in that roundabout, once you're physically in that circle, you're not stopping that vehicle, be it car, bike, whatever, for any reason. After you've left the roundabout, perhaps there's a stop sign, stoplight, or whatever at the next intersection. But the roundabout, the purpose of it is that traffic doesn't stop when it's in the roundabout. The opposite is true for traffic entering the roundabout. Traffic waiting to enter the roundabout always yields to traffic in the roundabout. If you're waiting to enter, you're not doing so until it's safe, and it's not safe until there's enough of a gap that you can do it with the knowledge that traffic in the roundabout never stops. I've absolutely gotten the wave before, where I'm on the bicycle, I'm waiting to enter the roundabout, and the car is in the roundabout, and they stop fully because they're an ally and they're friendly and they want to show that they like me and, you know, they're a good person. I understand that instinct. However, you're now breaking this covenant of the way the roundabout works. Everybody behind you doesn't understand what's happening. Great way to get rear-ended. These tenets of first come, first serve, these tenets of traffic in the roundabout never stops, the reason we have them is to make us predictable. I know what's going to happen next. And so when we start having special different communications with individual people, the pedestrian that's about to step off the curb doesn't understand what's happening. The car behind you doesn't understand what's happening. So adhering to these rules, regardless of the device you're using, keeping yourself predictable those things are always going to be a good idea. So traffic in the roundabout never stops. Traffic waiting to enter the roundabout always yields to traffic in the roundabout. I don't think I'm physically capable of doing a bike education class, be it e-bike or otherwise, without talking about helmets. It's just a compulsion of mine. I think helmets are great. I can't think of any reason not to wear them. I can't think of any good reason not to wear them. I'll start off by saying helmets are essentially the last line of defense. Helmets are very, very useful right before you hit the ground. There are a bunch of things you can do to prevent yourself from hitting the ground in the first place. Half of all bike crashes that occur are completely solo falls. That's you completely on your own. It's also the most embarrassing type of bike crash. Hopefully no one's around to film you and put you on YouTube. There are classes that the Bike Coalition teaches that focus on bike handling skills and maneuvers and things that can make you better able to better equipped to anticipate the unexpected. So that can anticipate, or that can handle that 50% of solo bike falls. The other things that can help prevent you from being in a position where you will have afterwards said, I'm sure glad I was wearing a helmet, are things like lane positioning, things like predictability, things like communication. Those are all very important aspects that help keep you safe. Once all those things, something has gone wrong otherwise, now we're very thankful for wearing the helmet. Having a helmet that fits is great. Having a helmet that fits and is comfortable is almost more important, because the helmet only works if you wear it, and it doesn't work if you don't wear it. And so finding a helmet that you actually like the look of, finding a helmet that is comfortable, finding a helmet that, I mean, if you need to buy a Minions helmet, go out and buy a Minions helmet. Buy a cartoon character, buy the one with a mohawk. They all have different, the options are almost endless at this point. There's technology, there's lights, there's turn signals. You don't always have to look like you're trying to, you know, race across the entire country of France when you get on the bicycle. If you want to do that, you can, but there's skateboard helmets, there's all kinds of different styles. If you're using an e-bike, you're moving faster, so having a helmet that has a little bit more coverage is probably a good idea. That said, wearing the helmet's the most important part. And the thing that made me start wearing a helmet wasn't, you know, graphic descriptions of, you know, terrible things. It wasn't being threatened with tickets. It wasn't being yelled at. It was just finding a helmet that I actually liked the look of and that I found comfortable. So if you can find those things, you're more likely to wear it regardless of your age. That said, under the age of 18, you're required by law to have a helmet on your head. Class 3 e-bikes with that top speed of 28 miles per hour, you're required to have a helmet no matter what your age, and always recommended. If you're on a ride with the Bike Coalition where we require it, your individual organization may require it, your school may require it, whatever it is. But it's always a good idea, even if the law says it's not required. There are some specific new rules in 2023. I'd like specifically to call your attention to the rule regarding passing. You may have heard previously of this idea that you should give 3 feet of space when passing a bicyclist. I like that. However, it's hard to tell what 3 feet of space is. It's the length of a roll of wrapping paper. But I mean, unless you stand next to your car and hold the wrapping paper out when you're in the driveway and have someone tell you exactly how far to, I mean, you don't know offhand, especially when you're driving. So there's a new rule in 2023, which says when safe, that's the most important part of that sentence, when safe, if a car is passing a bicyclist and the bicyclist is in the lane and there are more than one travel lane moving in the same direction, when safe, you should, as a car driver, change lanes in order to pass. Say that again. When passing a bicyclist, if you have the ability, when it's safe, you should change lanes in order to pass that bicyclist. That seems like common sense to me. That seems like a nice thing to do. That seems like a polite thing to do. Oh, there's this bicyclist. I don't want them to feel crowded. I have the ability to change lanes fully in order to pass, so that's what I'm going to do. That's the new law that says if you have the ability when it's safe, you are in fact required to change lanes fully when passing someone on a bike. I'll leave it there, but don't forget it. There might be a test later. There's also laws regarding pedestrian crossings. While it is still not recommended to cross mid-block, the act of crossing mid-block is no longer a criminal offense, a ticketable offense, especially specifically provided that there's no immediate danger. So it's not something that is recommended. It's not a good idea, but the specific rule is that it's no longer a ticketable offense. There's also some new rules that are coming in regarding the walk signal, and it sort of applies to that bike light. And when the bikes are leaving the line, as opposed to when the cars are, when that light changes. So keep an eye out for those as they come in. It's still always going to be a good rule of thumb to assume, you know, same roads, same rules, same right is a catchphrase I've heard thrown around. As the uses for bicycles become more broad, I think the rules around them become more specific, and that's a good thing. There's always more to learn. So keep an eye out and take some more classes from the Bike Coalition if you'd like more information on any of these rules. Places to find that are our social media pages. We are the San Diego County. I am a member and one of staff of the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition. We are county-wide, so San Ysidro to Oceanside, even out to Julian. And this is the short version of the short version of the short class. If you'd like more, if you'd like an hour long, if you'd like me to come to your specific workplace and talk to you about bike stuff, I can do that. We can put on a bike ride. We can go to your kid's school and put on an assembly. We can put on a bike rodeo forum and practice skills drills. There's all kinds of fun stuff. So consider this the beginning of your dipping your toe into the world of bike education. This is not the end. And I look forward to seeing you in a class, or at the very least, out there on the road on Bike Anywhere Day. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you so much, Kevin. That was really helpful information. So I think next we're going to take one final poll here. So the question is, how much space should you leave between you and a cyclist? So we'll take a pause here to let you participate in this poll. Okay, so looks like majority of people were listening to Kevin as he said, change lanes when safe to do so. So you're not wrong with the 3 feet. That also has been the law, but the new one is trying to encourage people to change lanes when it is safe to do so. So thanks for participating in the poll. And I know we're getting short on time here, but before we go to questions, I do want to take just a couple minutes to talk about SANDAG Sustainable Transportation Services, which has formerly been known as iCommute and sometimes is referred to as STS. So the goal of these services is to help people shift from driving alone to more sustainable transportation options like carpooling, van pooling, taking transit, walking, or biking, like we're focusing on with Bike Anywhere Day. So as part of the services we offer, SANDAG has an employer program that's focused on helping employers design commuter programs to support employees with exploring their commute options. This in turn helps reduce traffic congestion during peak travel times and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So if you would like free assistance for your organization, then we encourage you to reach out to us at sustainabletransportation@sandag.org. So additional transportation services related to biking that we offer is our bike lockers. SANDAG manages more than 750 bike lockers in over 60 locations throughout San Diego County. And these are located at all coaster and sprinter stations, most trolley and rapid stations, and some park and ride lots. So this will allow you to combine biking with another mode of travel like transit. You can register for the bike parking on our website at sandag.org. And the only requirement is a refundable $25 key deposit. SANDAG also offers free bike education classes. I know Kevin touched on this a little bit for both employers and schools, and this is taught by the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition. There are also bike maintenance quick checks with local bike mechanics available, as well as group rides that are offered for employers. And at SANDAG, we've accounted for the what ifs. So anyone who uses carpool, vanpool, takes transit, or bikes to work is eligible for our guaranteed ride home program. Participants can get a free ride home in an Uber, taxi, or rental car up to 3 times per year in the event of a personal or family emergency, unscheduled overtime, or being stranded at work due to a carpool, vanpool driver having to leave for an emergency. Individuals simply need to sign up for this free program on our website, sandag.org, before using this service. Okay, so I know we have covered a lot, just a few takeaways. I hope you all felt that this webinar was useful, but we want to encourage you to take the free pledge if you haven't already at sandag.org/bike month. Please encourage your colleagues, your friends, family to take the free pledge and join us as you go by bike on Thursday, May 18th. And try to plan your route for Bike Anywhere Day in advance using the Google Pit Stop map and or SANDAG's interactive San Diego Regional Bike Map that Josh walked us through. So those are the 3 takeaways. So now we're going to open it up for questions. I think a couple people have already entered questions in, but if you haven't, we're going to stay on here for a couple added minutes and try to get these answered. So let's see what we have here. Let's see, we have one question. Can the pit stops be seen in a more privacy-focused mapping program than Google? So hopefully that was answered where Josh showed us the additional map on SANDAG's website. So that's not using Google. And as he showed you, there is a layer that shows the pit stops. I recently visited that map and that layer actually shows up automatically. So if you visit SANDAG's website, go to the bike map, then that's another option if you don't want to use Google. Next question is, when will e-bike rules be enforced? Claremont has 3 class 3 e-bikes weaving in and out of auto and bike lanes. So I think, as Kevin went over, e-bikes need to follow the rules just like every other road user. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, Kevin.
No, weaving is, I guess, the main issue with it, as I'm hearing it described, is unpredictable. And that's the main problem I have with that. A class 3 e-bike does have the top speed of 28 miles per hour, and with added speed comes added responsibility. I think that's what Spider-Man said, right? And so those are definitely things to look out for. It's not, unless it's your job to enforce those rules, it's not your job to enforce those rules. It is the job of specific folks to do that. So those are things that you can call attention to your elected officials. Those are things that you can bring to our attention. But on the day-to-day, we can just encourage each other to be good people and be polite and wait for each other and slow down a little bit. And those are things that in general will improve all of our lives. But we can't always wait and hope that everybody else does everything perfect. Focusing on ourselves is the first step to bike enlightenment. How's that?
All right, great. One more question for you, Kevin. Somebody's asking whether you're going to go over how to trigger a green light at an intersection that doesn't have a bike signal. So any tips on how to do that if there is not a bike signal?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is what's called a loop detector, and that may be what you're referring to when you talk about bike signal, but maybe not. On those intersections that do have those bike-specific lights that we showed, oftentimes they will have loop detectors specifically for bikes, and they'll be in the bike lane, or I'm sorry, in the cycle track. A standard travel lane also has a loop detector, and it's a specific, piece of hardware which is sunken into the ground, and it's harder to see when you're driving and easier to see when you're driving a bicycle. But positioning yourself over that loop is good. And by over that loop, I don't mean in the middle. I mean with as much of your bike in contact with the edge of that circle as possible. And the more that your bike has in contact with that circle, the more likely it is that you'll interact with the loop. That being said, I even today was riding my bike and the light didn't change for me, and I had to sit through a second cycle. But the way I solved the problem was there was a car behind me, and they were so far back that they also weren't triggering the loop detector. I gave them a little signal. I said, hey, come forward a little bit, then you're on that loop detector and it'll definitely detect you. And then the light changed and we were all able to move through. So communication is always a good thing. Look for that loop detector. And if all else fails, get off the bike, hit the little crosswalk button, and then you are allowed to become a pedestrian as a bicyclist, which is something that car drivers can't actually do. So kind of a fun extra plan.
All right, and I do want to let everyone know that it is 12 o'clock, so if you have another meeting you have to run to or something else to do, we are going to stay on for a couple more minutes, but if you need to hop off at 12, then thank you so much for joining us, and here is our contact information, biking@sandag.org if you have questions that didn't get answered. But for those that do want to stay on, we'll try to answer a couple more of these questions. So the next one was, why does the bike light turn red when the light is green for vehicles going in the same direction?
Specifically, if a car was going to turn right across the straight flowing field of traffic for the bicyclist, that would be a concern and an area for a right hook. I think it's something like 15 to 20% of all bike crashes that are car versus bike collisions are that right hook type of collision, a car turning right in front of where the bike is traveling. So the idea being, if the bike travel lane is stopped completely, then cars are freely able to turn right in front of that bike lane or cycle track, as the case may be. If that isn't something you're interested in dealing with, leave the cycle track completely. You can become a vehicle and, not become a vehicle. You can act further like a vehicle and put yourself in the flow of traffic with the cars. And you're, more than welcome to do that, especially in a situation where there is no bike light. That is something that we're recommending, is getting yourself out of that far right edge unless you're planning on turning right. So the reason it's red is to prevent right hooks. And even without that sign, those are specific things that you should be looking out for.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Somebody said kindly share the recording after the webinar, so I'm glad that was entered because I did mean to mention that again, that we will be sending this webinar out tomorrow. I know there's a lot of information packed into it, so hopefully if there's any parts you want to rewatch, we will be sending that out tomorrow. Next question is, do you offer a personal demo? I think we maybe would need a little more context to that question. I'm guessing maybe a demo. I'm not sure whether that was related to the mapping that Josh was showing us or related to some of the biking that Kevin was. If you want to, if you're still on and want to clarify, we can try to answer that one. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next. How should I drive when I encounter a hostile driver or a driver who perceives me as a nuisance? I could speak to that, but I think I'll let you, Kevin, if you would like.
Well, it's never fun, and I'm fully aware of that for sure. It's rare that I've gotten into the point where I felt like I needed to completely remove myself from the roadway. But again, that's something that is easier for a bicyclist to do than it is for a driver of a car to do. I can physically get off the bike and then I'm on the sidewalk and I'm completely outside of the flow of traffic. So that's an option. Communication is good. Communication is a good thing. Communicating with your hands, communicating with eye contact, communicating with your voice in a polite way is a good thing. Physical contact between a car and a bicycle is never a good idea, even if it's gentle. So avoiding putting yourself in a position where that kind of thing is going to happen in the first place is good. And that's why people like these completely separated facilities, because there's less interaction there. That being said, there's no perfect answer to that question, I don't think. And if there is a situation that you're worried could turn even more uncomfortable than it is, then finding a way to quickly remove yourself from that situation is probably the quickest rule of thumb that I can think of.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And I know it's 12:05, so I think we're going to have to kind of wrap things up. But again, if you do have additional questions, then feel free to email us at biking@sandag.org. And I did want to comment on one last question I saw come in about whether we would be counting e-bikes as well as regular bikes. I don't think we had planned on that, but it's actually a great suggestion. So thanks for sharing that with us. Maybe we'll consider doing that. But thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all on Bike Anywhere Day on May 18th. Thank you so much.